This is Caleb Owens with the Insurance Experience. Welcome to podcast episode number 6. I'm with Sean Kling with Aaraya Claims. Hi, Sean. How are you?
I am doing amazing, Caleb. Thanks for having me today.
I'm really excited about having you on. We were just talking about your background. Quite literally, you grew up in that type of atmosphere. So that's really interesting. Tells me about the character of the person I'm working with.
Yeah, I grew up in the Pennsylvania Dutch countryside in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, outside of Philadelphia. And when I grew up, it looked all like this in the background here. About towards the mid 90s, it started to get a lot of development and stuff. So it really has changed.
Sure. No, it's really interesting. Okay, yeah. So, Sean, tell me about yourself and tell me about your background.
Oh, yeah, my name is Sean Kling. I'm the CEO of Aaraya Claims. I'm originally from Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Now I reside in Tampa, Florida. I'm father of two. My one daughter is in college. She's getting a history degree, and the other is graduating high school this year. She's going to school for animation. I was
Wow.
in the Army after I graduated high school, did a little time in the Ordnance Department, U.S. Army, and then I worked as a welder pipe fitter for a number of years, about 15 years construction for my father's company. And then got out of that, went and worked with OSHA as an OSHA outreach instructor, doing education, not enforcement. And I'm now a public insurance adjuster, licensed in 19 different states with my partner, Steven Strakowski. And we help homeowners or property owners, yacht owners, boat owners, aircraft owners, you name it. We help them with insurance claims.
Wow. Wow. That's an impressive history. You covered a lot of territory. Sounds like you've done quite a bit of different things as well.
Yeah, I also was a historical consultant for television and film. So I've been in a lot of movies and television
Wow.
shows and used to do all the Comic-Con stuff and speaking and stuff like that. Yeah.
That's very impressive. So tell me about Aaraya Claims and what inspired you to start your own public adjusting firm.
Well, ironically, growing up in Pennsylvania, my house was built in, when I was married, was built in 1923, I believe. And it was an old slate roof house. And like most of the houses in our neighborhood were all slate. And we got hit with like an ice storm, I believe it was. And one side of the slate came off. So it was the first homeowner's insurance claim I ever filed in my entire life. Didn't know what I was doing, didn't know anything about it, didn't even know a public adjuster existed. And my insurance company, I believe it was Travelers, I might be wrong, it's been some time, came
Sure.
out and they looked at it and they said, okay, yeah, we can fix this. We're just going to fix one side, but you got to pay for the other three sides. I said, that don't seem right. Like, you want me to put shingles on a roof and not slate, and you should be replacing slate. That's why I'm paying homeowner's insurance, and why am I only paying for one side? So, like a fool, I didn't know any better, like the average homeowner. I just took them at their word, hired a local contractor that I had known for years. He came out, did a great job, and he built the roof and put everything on a shingle. Sometime later, my friend Brad, who was an insurance agent, he's now since passed away, he was insuring my home, and he came over. He's like, "This says it's slate. Why do you have shingle?" I said, "This is what the insurance company that the bank had provided me when I got my mortgage told me." And he said, "Oh no, man, yeah, that's not how that's supposed to be." He says, "Actually, you devalued your home by the type of material. Slate's 100 years and shingle is 25, 30 years, depends on where you're at." He said, "You did
Right.
a devalue of your home." And that was my first soiree, I should say, into public adjusting world. And then after that, I worked with OSHA, and I would see all sorts of insurance claims, whether they were injuries or fleet vehicles and stuff like that. So it started to get my attention into what the public adjusting world was. And my brother was an attorney in Florida that practiced first party property, and he contacted me about 5 years ago and said, "Hey, you ever know what a public adjuster is?" I said, "I don't really, but I heard of them." And he got me into it, and I've been doing it ever since.
Wow. So your brother helped you inspire you to get you going.
Yeah,
That's really cool. That's really interesting, especially with you had a personal experience side of what can happen if you don't have a
yeah.
public adjuster. Okay, that's really interesting. I'll lead into that is what advice would you give to someone, an average layman out there who is filing an insurance claim for the first time?
The first thing, even before you file your insurance claim, is you should really become friends with your agent. Most agents
Okay.
don't work for the insurance company; they're independent contractors that sell a product. And most people don't know that. They think they're an employee of State Farm or Allstate or
Right.
Progressive, but they're not in most instances. So I would get to know your agent, build a relationship with them, and the relationship with an agent is key. While they can't adjust claims, they can take care of you. And then when you build a policy, don't go for the cheapest policy. Most people say if I can save $200-300 a month or $1,000 a year, it's worth it. Don't cut corners because, what we used to say in the Army, travel light, freeze at night. It's the same when it comes to dealing with insurance. When you buy cheap, that's what you're getting. And you may meet your requirements and think it's never going to happen to you. But in reality, it's very likely over the course of owning your home and with a mortgage at least 20, 30 years, you're going to have some type of insurance claim along that way. So that's the first piece of advice I would give. If you have damage to your home, just remember that the insurance company is required to pay you or at least investigate what's going on, but they don't always have your best interest in mind. They might say it's denied because of this no coverage, or, oh, we're only going to pay you this much. And the average Joe will just take the insurance company at their word because they think paying them makes them fight for their right. But in reality, most people are legislated into law to have insurance, whether it's auto insurance to drive, or if you have an FDIC mortgage with a bank, you have to have insurance to cover your home or your property, your rental property.
Wow.
So most people don't realize that. So the insurance companies actually have it legislated into law that you have to have this service, and they're a for-profit business. So they're not wanting to pay anything. If you have something happen to your home or your rental property, your car, boat, whatever, it doesn't hurt to talk to a public adjuster. You don't have to have you don't have to sign a contract. At least just explore your options, get your information. Obviously, if you're happy with what your insurance company gives you, there's nothing the public adjuster can do. But just remember that 9 times out of 10, that's not really the case.
Okay, that's quite a bold statement. Okay, tell me about that along what you alluded to earlier is what kind of misconceptions do most people have of public adjusters?
First of all, most people don't know we exist.
Right, that's even
Something
number
like
one.
46 of the 50 states or so have a form of public adjuster.
Mhm.
And then also Puerto Rico has public adjusters, the Virgin Islands, so some of the territories. I'm not sure about Guam, maybe they don't, but most states have a public adjuster, and we're the best kept secret in the insurance industry. The carriers don't want you to know about us, so they're not putting us out there, and they paint us in this bad light that, oh, these guys are just sharks to take money and make money off of you. Think about this for a second. Public
Right.
adjuster works for free. They don't get paid unless they get you money. The insurance company collects a premium every month, every year, every 6 months. They're getting paid, and you're paying them to underpay you. When a public adjuster is working for free out of their own pocket, estimates, engineering reports, inspections, time on the phone, administrative costs, all of that's out of their pocket. If they don't get you anything, they're in the red. They've wasted their time. So, of course, they're going to try to get you the most money that you are legally allowed to get because that's how a public adjuster gets paid. So, to dispel the myth that the public adjuster is in there to take your money, think about who's saying that. The person that's actually taking your money, not the public adjuster.
Okay.
Public adjuster gets paid
Yeah.
on a percentage of the claim. Insurance company gets paid no matter what, whether you have a claim or not for 20 years.
No, you have a point there. It's definitely a matter of where the money comes from and then also where the interests lie. That makes a big difference, I think, summing up what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense. So whenever you're out there going out to evaluate a claim, kind of like your own personal house, and you were describing that type of situation where you have this one type of roofing and it may cost, let's say, yeah, that sounds like a very expensive type of roofing, $80,000, $100,000. And you're talking about shingles, which are I think 25 years is wildly optimistic. I've seen them last 5 years. There is a huge difference in cost as well. So how do you go out and do your job properly? How do you go out and value these type of claims?
Each insurance claim is a little different. It really depends upon who your carrier is, what type of insurance you have, and then also what type of home you have. Not everybody lives in a home. Some people live in a mobile home, modular, condominium. Some people live in a historical HO8 type of home. It's an antique type of home with basic coverage. So it really depends upon the value of the home, depends upon the type of the home and the type of coverage you have. The average person usually, if they're not in a trailer or in a condo or in a modular or a historical home, usually have an HO3 policy, which is a standard stock policy that most homeowners have in order to meet their mortgage. So when I go out and I value that, I try to take a look at their policy if they have it and see what type of coverage. You'd be surprised at the things that are not covered in your insurance policy by cutting corners, like I said earlier, by taking discounts. So That's one of the first things we do. The second thing I do is I look at the property itself. A lot of people will say this is an insurance claim. No, it's not really an insurance claim. Maybe this issue, that issue. It's a wear and tear issue, or it's a neglect issue. That's
Okay.
different. That's general maintenance, and we don't put that out there to try to claim insurance money on. Only the damages that are done. So we'll look at that. We'll evaluate the property, see what type of coverage they have, see what type of material it is, put it together. There may be times, and I've done this as well. I've walked up to a client and said, "Look, you have $1,000 deductible. This is maybe $2,000 or $3,000 worth of damage. Instead of paying me or my company to do it, let me guide you through this and let me get you this money that you need to do it." Other times, the damage might not even be above deductible. Hey, let's just fix this. It's a maintenance issue. Where we come into play is more something of a larger loss where you're going to get more of a fight back, a dispute from a carrier. Usually, most carriers aren't disputing $2,000 and $3,000, $4,000 claims. The bigger the claim, generally, that's what they dispute. But it also depends upon the state. So there's so many
Hmm.
variables how you value a claim. It's really just an experience thing, and a lot of new public adjusters getting into it should shadow people that have time in the industry and not just go out there and sign everything up that they can.
Got it. Okay, that's really interesting. And it really paints a picture for me. It's just like a layman who's going out there and filing a claim. You have no experience. You have no idea about all the complexities that are going into this. Just kind of what you're describing as your first time you filed a claim. That's probably very common with amongst everyone else out there. We don't know anything. We don't know anything about the industry. You don't get paid to. So, it's not your line of work. It's got to be really overwhelming and really complex. And in that situation, it seems like more than likely you're going to get taken advantage of.
Yeah, and there's a lot of messages that you should send to your clients when you get into this. We're your ride or die. Okay, so if that claim is taking a year, two, three, I have claims that are 4 and 5 years old that are
Wow.
taking that long to settle. We're your ride or die. We're not making any money. There's no reason for us to hold up this claims process. It's usually your carrier that's holding it up, or sometimes even the homeowner themselves by not providing the proper information that we need to get things done. But we're your ride or die, meaning we're riding shotgun with you. If this thing isn't settling, I've wasted a year, 6 months, 2 years of my life on something and not being able to get any money back. While in the meantime, your carrier is still charging you your premiums every month or every 6 months or every year. So
Huh.
there's so much that goes into it. You also need to take into consideration too, the average homeowner does not really know much about insurance in general. I do run into some that maybe worked as a desk adjuster years ago or an auto adjuster or maybe sold some health insurance. It's night and day. You pick your clients, pick your clients well, and that's a whole other conversation to have about picking who you work with as well. You got to really
Okay.
watch who you want to work with.
Huh. That's really interesting. I know about some things that are going on in Florida. So I was hoping you can shed some more light from your own personal side of it. Is with the bigger one is Florida State Bill 2A, and this has to do with the insurance industry there. Can you shed some light on that? What's going on?
Oh, the whole Florida insurance thing has been crazy. When I first got into it, a public adjuster used to be able to adjust a claim half the time, 75% of the time without getting any type of legal assistance involved. And over that time, it's changed. They've
Hmm.
changed policy limits on certain things for water breaks, let's say. You used to be able to get the policy limit of the home. Now, a lot of places only give you $10,000 maximum to repair your house if a sink breaks. Even though your kitchen might be a $100,000 kitchen, you're only getting $10,000. They changed laws
Wow.
on sinkholes and how sinkholes are repaired, all sorts of different laws. It's just this new law is just icing on the cake of things that they've been doing over the past couple years. We used to have a 3-day right of rescission to cancel. And then in 2021, they changed it to 10 days. We had to change our contracts. Okay, 10 days is great. Homeowner gets into it. They said, okay, 10 days, like a lemon law type of thing. I don't want to move forward with you. They could cancel the contract, but we could still collect our fees on any work that we paid for out of pocket. So if I paid for an estimate or an engineer report in that 10 days, the homeowner was responsible to pay that cost for that. I mean, a couple $100 maybe out of pocket.
Hmm.
Then what they did was the state put into law that we had to get an estimate to the homeowner in 60 days. Before we never had that law, we could take 3 months if we wanted to. So that was something they added into it. Now, recent law that they passed in December, that didn't so much affect public adjusters as it affected more of the homeowners and the property owners way to fight back against these big behemoths. Insurance companies are multi-billion-dollar industries.
Sure.
And what would happen is the laws were set up to protect Joe homeowner from this multi-billion-dollar industry that would drag things out. So a homeowner couldn't pay an attorney to fight on his side. They didn't have the money. Maybe the claim wasn't worth it. So they would pay thousands of dollars for an attorney out of pocket. The law in place was that if a homeowner had to sue their insurance company, the insurance company was responsible for paying for their legal fees. They took that away now. In essence, what's happening with that is that attorneys now are not going to be able to work for homeowners with smaller insurance claims, which means that insurance companies are going to be able to deny smaller insurance claims and save bottom revenue and not have to pay out on those cases. So that's going to save them a lot of money. And now also that if you do sue your insurance company effective January 1 with any new policies that came out, you have to pay your attorney directly. So even if you win the case, you'll have to pay a portion of your claim to the attorney, and the insurance company will just drag that out for years and years. And it comes to a point where you're like, is it even worth paying the attorney? The attorney's going to soak up all my fees. That's one of the things that's going on right now.
Top of that, a lot of people can't afford to do that. You're talking about the minority that could afford to pay an attorney for years. Probably a good portion of people that are on fixed incomes simply tap out as soon as an attorney gets involved. Hey, I can't even afford to compete here.
And the insurance companies will just drag it through. They had a lot of politicians. A lot of politicians got involved, and they pushed this through. And reading some of basically the statements from the politicians was everything from, hey, if you disagree with this bill, let's just meet off to the side. So in state law, we have what they call the Sunshine Act, that if more than three or more politicians meet together, they have to have an open forum that everybody can hear it. But what they were doing is they were just trying to meet with people one-on-one, so it didn't fall under the Sunshine Act. So that way they could coerce other politicians not to fight the issue. The other issue that we ran into too is that prior to COVID, insurance claims were usually taking about a year to settle. What wound up happening was that the insurance companies, when COVID happened, the court systems closed. So they would deny the claims, or deny or stall, not come up with answers, just drag these things out. And homeowners had to hire attorneys. What happens with legal fees after 2 years of trying to fight the insurance companies with no courts open? They pile up.
Right.
Well, a lot of these insurance companies, they keep talking about these 10 insurance companies that went insolvent. But a lot of these insurance companies went insolvent after the court systems opened because they realized they were going to lose in court. They collected premiums for 2 years, didn't pay anybody, and instead went insolvent, closed up so they didn't have to pay the attorney's fees.
Wow.
All the claims went to the state-funded agencies, and the state-funded agencies pay everybody nickels on the dollar. The attorneys can't collect their fees. The public adjusters can't collect separate fees. Everything is there. And a homeowner gets less, and they walked away and they went like this, and they opened up new firms. And they opened up new insurance companies.
Wow. That's quite a history there. That's crazy. Yeah, so there's a lot going on in Florida with all that complexity, what you're describing there. That's really unfortunate and really crazy type of situation. But and how, if I understand correctly as well, there's something going on, and hopefully you know more about this than I do, with public adjusters. How they're being targeted. Can you describe more about that?
It all started after Hurricane Ian. And right about the time of Hurricane Ian, the Florida CFO, Chief Financial Officer, Jimmy Petronas, went down to Fort Myers area, Cape Coral, where the storm hit, and which he should do. He's a politician. He needs to be down there for the people. I'm not going to knock him for that. That's what he's elected for the people to do, to represent.
Sure.
But he went down there and he basically told everybody that on national news that public adjusters are a bunch of locusts. And what that did was, you have a lot of older people that are afraid to get preyed on because they're elderly, and it made people say, I don't want to hire a public adjuster. And he said Petronas said in his interviews and his statements, call my office. Call my office if you're not happy. I wonder how much Jimmy Petronas or his office has actually done to help people. I'm sure that they have. I'm not saying that they haven't done anything to help anybody. But I'm sure of the millions of people that live in Lee County or Sarasota County, Collier County that got hit with this stuff, how many of them actually got help from their office? So he's telling people that we were a bunch of locusts, call my office. Stop with these litigating and seeing what's going on now. A majority, like 30% denial rate? down there. I think I read in the
Wow.
newspaper the other day, 30% denial rate. People are 6 months out from the storm, still don't have claims determinations. And the insurance companies are emboldened by this new legislation, and they're playing games, and they know that they have the CFO behind them to do this. Now they're trying to introduce legislation this month to curtail public adjusters. And we're hearing all sorts of crazy stuff where they're talking about cutting our fees. So in the
Right.
state of Florida, a public adjuster can collect 20% of a portion of a claim
Right.
on a non-state of emergency and 10% on a state of emergency. So state of emergency being like a hurricane or
Right.
flash flooding, something like that.
Some kind of.
It's natural disaster. Now they're trying to make it that everybody just gets 10%. It's just 10%. So they're already cutting our fees. Then they're trying to give homeowners a right to cancel after 30 days of signing our contract. If you are a public adjuster, you're not going to want to do any work in that first 30 days because it also adds in that we are not able to recoup our fees of any expenses we accrued during that first 30 days. So you could literally go in there and work this claim for somebody, get the money, and the homeowner could say, I'm not going to pay you. I'm going to cancel it. And you've wasted your time. They're also giving the insurance companies power that if we don't send them our letter of representation after 3 days, that our contract is null and void. And they're also saying that if we don't send the insurance company an estimate after 45 days, our contract is null and void. But yet that's really only 15 days because in the first 30 days, somebody can cancel. So they're giving us 2 weeks to build somebody's case without reprisal, except in a total loss. In a total loss, they're giving them additional 15 days, so it'd be 45 days, to cancel if the carrier decides to pay out 100% the contract with the public adjuster, and the public adjuster won't get paid. Among many other things that they're doing, but that's...
This is a law that they're trying to get passed. Is that correct?
Correct. Now, and an interesting point and I've talked to other public adjusters, and a lot of them didn't realize this, is that when you call a homeowner's insurance claim in, let's say you had a fire and you called me up and say, Sean, we want you to represent you. I call that claim in for you to the insurance company, or I get on board. A lot of times what happens is you call the phone number of the insurance company, and they give you a claim number. They give you an email address or some sort of person you send your letter of representation to. You can do that in 3 days with a regular residential claim. However, when you're in a commercial claim situation, you have companies that are not Florida bound. So you have companies like Lloyd's of London that's out of London. You have companies like Scottsdale that's out of Arizona. And when you call in those insurance claims, you don't talk to the insurance company directly. You talk to the broker. Well, the broker has to call the insurance company, the broker that sold the policy, and sometimes those insurance companies take 2 to 3 weeks to even get us a claim number or a representative to send our letter of rep in. By then, we're out of our 3-day compliance to send our letter of rep in. Where do we send it to? The broker? And so it automatically makes us out of compliance right then and there.
And this is being proposed as a new law that they're trying to get passed as well.
And I add on top of
crazy.
that, the insurance companies have all announced, the ones that are still around, profits for last year, multiple millions and millions of dollars of profits, and have increased their premiums. I was talking to a lady yesterday that was paying $200 a month in car insurance, no history of accidents, nothing, and it's now going to $600 a month, and they're putting in the notice letter that due to insurance companies losing money in the state of Florida, we need to increase the premiums. So now you have no way of getting a repercussions if they don't follow the rules. They did away with bad faith statutes. So if they don't follow the law, you can't sue them anymore. You can't go after them unless you pay for it, and they're also soaking you and increasing your premiums. So you have insurance in name only in the state of Florida. That's it.
Insurance in name only.
Companies are moving here now, opening up because it's a cash cow for them. And in my humble opinion, there needs to be some sort of federal investigation into this.
And there really couldn't be, though, because that would be all within the state. As long as anything of this nature is within the state, unless, of course, they did something that affected other states, then the federal government would get involved.
I'm not an attorney, so this.
I'm just thinking like it's really hard for the federal government to get involved and tell another state what to do. That's states' rights versus federal rights. But yeah, I see your point, though, without a doubt, that this is a very big issue. I have not heard enough about this kind of stuff going on in the national news. So much about the car insurance. That was news to me, what you're pointing out there. So I only knew about the residential home insurance, the rates going up. And I feel like I'm working in the industry. We're actually down there. We know what's going on. And still, we don't get to see the premium side. We don't know actually how people are affected by that. The fact that they're going up on car insurance as well, so that's spilling over into different areas. Not only do you have
Correct.
homeowners insurance going up, but you also have your car insurance going up and premiums. Now, everyone knows about inflation and about how much the average consumer is getting squeezed on everything. This would just put additional pressure on people. That there's a lot of people in Florida that are elderly and on fixed income. They
Fixed
don't,
income retirees.
yeah, not millionaires. Some are, obviously. There's some very wealthy people in the state of Florida, but you got a lot of people as well that are retirees. They're in that fixed income. They don't have X number of dollars to spend on a 300% increase in your premiums. So that must really put a lot of squeeze on these people down there as well.
Yeah, my mother's on a fixed income, and my mother's been retired for 6 7 years now. And you wonder what's going to happen. Do they just give up driving? Do they have to give up
Right.
their homes? Do they? You have to have insurance, and this is what I was saying earlier. Is it's legislated into law, so it's not even like you have an option.
So
You
what do
don't
you
have
mean
an
by that?
option to
You're
have.
talking about, just to clarify what you're saying, you're legislated into law. I understand that on car insurance. I know that you cannot drive without car insurance.
That's what I'm
Uh,
talking about. I'm talking about
oh,
car insurance.
yeah, because you're
Um,
absolutely right. There's no other
and I
options.
know, and I believe if you have a mortgage and the bank is
That's right.
FDIC insured or something, you have
That's
to have
right.
insurance as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's you're spot on with that. And 99% of all people are going to have a mortgage on their house. So it's very few people have their house actually paid off. If you paid it off, you could self-insure. But if you are making payments to a mortgage company, which most all people are, you got no choice. You're either going to go with this company, and if you can't find a company, you're going to go with Citizens, correct?
And that's another nightmare that's going on, Citizens Insurance. A lot of the companies that went insolvent, a lot of the homeowners had to leave those companies, obviously, and they couldn't get insurance anywhere because maybe they had an open claim, or maybe their roof was 20 years old and another insurance company didn't want to sign it onto it, or it was during hurricane season, which is very hard to get coverage during hurricane season. So a
Right.
lot of people went to Citizens Insurance. Citizens Insurance being has different rules. Like they don't have bad faith statutes. You can't go after them when they do you wrong. Um, and now Citizens is trying to, by the new law, and I think they're trying to rectify this. I've heard this before, but every Citizens policy needs to have flood insurance. So you could be a Citizens policyholder on a 20th story of a hotel or a condominium and have to have freaking flood insurance. What do you know? Is Ark going to come through? But you have to have that. And then also the new law is what they call the 20% rule. So if I have Citizens Insurance and I have to price out my insurance and say Allstate, State Farm, doesn't matter, has something that's 15% more than Citizens, I have to go with that policy. I can't stay with Citizens anymore. Now, everybody I get, if they're 25%, then I can stay with Citizens. But if a
Wow.
carrier quotes you under 20% on what Citizens, you have to get off of Citizens and go to that policy. And that's in the law too. So now you're basically making people get off of Citizens, which isn't a bad thing, but you're making people get off of Citizens, but now not only increasing their rate because insurance is more expensive, but somebody that's on a fixed income that might only can afford Citizens, you're making them pay 20% more.
Wow.
So
Yeah, so
yeah.
that goes within the last resort, that it's the insurer of last resort, and that's what they're trying to fall under, saying, hey, you have an option, even if it's 15% higher, it's still an option to you.
So Citizens last resort, or what they call a forced place policy.
Uh, wow. So that's crazy. So as well, you're talking about the actual impact on people's lives and how
Correct.
that it's not just a matter of, oh, pay an extra 20%. It's a matter of people may not have another option. You may either, you can't pay that much higher because that's the breaking point whenever it comes down to people's lives. And we've already seen inflation go up on everything over the past few years. And now you're talking an additional 10, 20% on top of all that could be just enough to snap them where they're having to decide, can I even live in this state anymore?
And you also have, I guess what gets me is, I don't think that all the politicians that pushed this law through had bad intentions. I don't think they all did. I think there were
Right.
people that had genuinely good intentions. But when you have politicians are the ones that are either writing the bills or strong supporters that either worked for the insurance industry or their families own an insurance company, that should be a little bit of
Conflict of
conflict of
interest.
interest there.
Yeah, that sounds pretty obviously conflict of interest. If you have any interest whatsoever, any affiliation, then that would be an obvious conflict of interest. But I had another gentleman on, I think a little while back, and he was an attorney for an insurance company in Florida, and he was really respectful and really intelligent. He knew what he's talking about, and he made a point. Definitely respect his point that these laws that they're passing are in trying to get the cost down. They're trying to keep the cost down for the insurance company by keeping the cost down to everyone. So, in sense, if like you go off and you insure and sue an insurance company and you get this massive settlement, that money comes from somewhere, and that's causing everyone's rates to go up. But I do see your point as well, as in it's like the law of unintended effects. It's not like people are intentionally doing this per se, but it's just like you're talking about these companies getting emboldened. And
Yep.
hey, if we can get away with this, then let's encroach this upon a little further. I don't necessarily think all the insurance companies, I think some companies out there are really good companies from what I've seen.
Absolutely.
And they're really
Absolutely.
good. Go ahead.
Yep. And a lot of the adjusters I've worked with, field adjusters, desk adjusters, there's good people that work in the insurance industry.
Right.
And some of them will flat out tell you, like, I just can't do it. And they'll let you know I can't do it.
Huh. That's interesting. Yeah. So I've seen some really good people, some amazing people out there in the insurance industry. Some companies are just awesome. You're just like, wow, I didn't know that they just go way above and beyond what you'd expect. They take care of their policyholders. It's these bad actors. Some of these companies, not all by any means, are the ones spoiling it for the rest, and they're taking advantage. I think it's like you're saying that word emboldened. That makes a lot more sense. Just this law was not necessarily written to screw everybody over. It was just
Well,
written this way, and then
and I've seen, I'm not on social media. I have a team that run that. I don't really spend a lot of time on social media, but I am on LinkedIn. And I've seen, and I'm not going to mention any names or the name of the company, but I have seen CEOs of major Florida insurance companies since this law was passed gloating online,
wow,
basically rubbing it in. And I'm telling people, we got to take screenshots of this. That
yeah,
this needs to be, there needs to be an investigation into this, because when
yeah.
they're sitting there saying online, the attorney, public adjuster, roofer game is over, and it's like, what game? What game are you talking about? The game that you don't want to pay your clients? Are you accusing every one of your clients that's filed an insurance claim? Is that what you're saying? And this is this type of stuff that needs to be brought up. The reason I say the federal and the state and stuff,
Yeah.
you talk about that, flood insurance is federally backed up.
I see your point there. Yeah.
Flood insurance is federal backing. And one of the problems you have with Hurricane Ian is flood is blaming homeowners insurance, and homeowners insurance is blaming flood.
It's just like a tit for tat. They're going back and forth, aren't they?
And and how can the state of Florida make different rules concerning insurance, but then hold us the same accountable for flood? Now, and I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
When you're doing a flood insurance claim, you have a different letter of representation that's federally designed. It has to have a person's name, birthday, where they were born. It has to be notarized. It's different than a public adjuster's regular contract for a homeowner's insurance claim. Also, the rules about getting a sworn proof of loss for flood, which is federal, is a federal standard, because we will get kicked back from the insurance company if we try to follow any Florida rules. Say we have 60 days to get in a sworn proof of loss, but Florida's telling us we have 45 days. So if we don't get that estimate in 45 days and it's a flood claim, are we breaking a federal rule?
Bro, you have a good point there. Yeah, I have a good point, because it's kind of like these conflict zones where these two things are going to overlap. And you're absolutely right. That would be a gray area where you'd have to get attorneys involved to try to go in there and find out which one has precedence over the other.
And you almost have to wonder, and sometimes too, is a lot of these companies, they may have a division in Florida or Georgia or Kentucky or whatever, but they're a national company. So
Right.
where does the interstate commerce clause fall?
See, now you make a good point. You have a very good point there, is that you're absolutely right, is that these companies are operating in all 50 states or even in 12 other states, and then they would be regulated by the federal government and not just by the state of Florida. But I think in the least sense that there needs to be more attention brought to this. It needs to be more, and that sometimes can get more done than a federal inquiry or something like that. But if actually a lot more people know about what's going on, then I think more can happen to it. If all consumers stood up and united and said, hey, you know what? We're done with this. We're not going to do this anymore. You can't really boycott anything. Like you're pointing out, you're stipulated. You have to have insurance. There is no boycotting it. You're going to get it.
I say this a lot since the law passed, and if they pass this thing with public adjusters, it's going to basically be the death of not only our industry, but the death of homeowners getting any legitimate help. They'll still be
In
able to get
Florida,
help, but
in
it'll be
Florida,
they'll have, yeah, in Florida, they'll be
right.
fighting with one hand behind their back. But I said this, and God forbid this ever happens, but it's going to take one major storm. And I'm not talking about a category 5 in the panhandle where there's only a couple 100,000 people live. I'm talking a Cat 4, Cat 5 hitting a place like Jacksonville or Miami,
Yeah, yeah,
and these people can't get anything done. And now you have a large voter base of people that can't get anything done, and the insurance companies are denying and delaying and going insolvent, and then it's going to be, what the hell did we do? And then it's going to turn full circle, and it's going to come back on the insurance companies, and there's going to be internal investigations, and there's going to be fraud investigations and everything. They blame us for committing fraud, and they bring these great examples. And there are people on our side of the aisle that do that. We're not one, and I don't deal with people like that, but there are people like that. There was the attorney that got caught down in Southwest Florida, I forget his name. He got caught a couple years ago. There's another one that's going on right now that's not in Florida. They're in Louisiana. I've been reading some stuff about them. And they point these people out. Oh, this group of people are taking advantage of these homeowners. Sometimes people in drastic situations will go to drastic measures. They'll say, maybe I got to hire this shady lawyer because my insurance company I've been paying for 20 years isn't paying me, and I got to do this type of thing. I'm not condoning bad action, but what I am saying is, are you going to tell me that these 1,700 people that were involved with some of these cases are all committing fraud? To what extent is the insurance company responsible? If the insurance company would have paid out correctly, those 1,700 people wouldn't have to go to that attorney for desperate measures to try to get paid. And again, not condoning the actions of the attorney. I'm just saying that why did 1,700 people have to go to court to sue their insurance company? Why?
In the first place, yeah. If you really carried that thought forward, if everything was taken care of and these insurance companies were, all of them, were doing a great job, you would have no need for a public adjuster. You
Right.
guys would be out of business because
Right.
people would be like, no, everything is taken care of. I've got my claim. I got my money. I don't need a public adjuster. It's the situations where they don't get everything taken care of, where they're left with getting denied on a legitimate claim. That's why it's a big industry, is because of situations like that. And just to
I
clarify,
often
and maybe go ahead.
I often wonder, I'm not sure how many Hurricane Ian and Nicole victims there are, Nicole being on the East Coast, that have claims, but let's just come up with a number, say 1 million. It's probably more than that. How many of them
Right.
actually have representation of a public adjuster or an attorney?
Probably not many.
Probably a
Probably
very
very,
small percent.
exactly.
So how
Yeah.
many of them are
You know
losing
what?
out?
I want to ask you another thing about that as well, is that with public adjusters, is that because you're talking about all these different laws, how they're putting that in place where it's getting, you don't have as much time to work. Either you can get they can deny you and kick you off the claim, or the consumer themselves can say, hey, you know what? I don't need a public adjuster and walk away. But another big aspect of that is with the public adjuster is that you guys are typically walking in 30, 60, 90 days later after the claim was filed. Is that correct?
Sometimes even more. We used
Wow.
to be able to go back 5 years for damages when I first got into the industry.
Wow. 5 years.
Then they changed it to 3. And then it's the new law is the new law kicked in. It's only a year, and that's an interesting bird in itself because unlike, I'm originally from Pennsylvania, people might own a second home in Pennsylvania, maybe vacation, but Florida is a big vacation spot. And we just got done COVID. There's people from, let's say, Canada. A lot of Canadians own properties in Florida. They couldn't leave their country for a year or two without a COVID shot or without a passport. So if that
Right.
incident would have happened while they were away, they come down here and they could say, it's over a year, so you're screwed.
I didn't even think about that, but you have a very good point. What about these people that are just having vacation homes, can't get back there, and then just denied statute of limitations, so you're outside of it? Sorry.
Correct. Yeah, and
That's interesting.
we're a big retirement. You have what they call snowbirds here. People are here for 6 months, or sometimes they don't come down for a year, and then all of a sudden a hurricane comes through, or it doesn't even have to be a hurricane. It could be a fire. Somebody could break into the place and vandalize the
Right.
place, and now you're SOL.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So there's a lot going on with all that. And then, because it, to me, like really changes a lot of things. If you think about it from a public adjuster's perspective is that claim has already been going on for, like you're saying, sometimes a year, sometimes 8 months ago it was filed, the actual claim, and then you're stepping in then later trying to help out the insured. And at that point, you're playing catch up. It seems so you're constantly trying to say, "Hey, what happened here? Where's all this stuff at?" It sounds that could definitely add some complexities to what you're doing.
Yeah, and there's so many moving parts. We're dealing with a lot of clients now that are Hurricane Ian that have just recently started to sign with us in the past couple months because they're not happy with what their insurance company
I
is
see.
providing them. But it's not just contents, it's not just their home. I have people that literally have filed a claim in October that have not gotten assisted living expense. And some of your audience might not know what that is, but what that is, it's money that allows a person to live when their home is unlivable, whether it's a
That's
unit.
what we do here. That's what this company does. I know about that. That's what we live and die on. That little part of it all, that little ALE that nobody really pays attention to, that's important to us. And I'm sure it's important to a lot of people right now that cannot live in their homes.
And I have a
Where
lot of my clients right now maybe got the first initial month of assisted living expense back in October, November, and haven't gotten anything since. We try to
right,
help our clients get with assisted living companies because the one thing that Aaraya does is we don't charge our clients for assisted living expense. We're not going to ask somebody to give us money so they can live. Like, we're going to help them get their house repaired. So we refer them to assisted living expense companies. And a lot of assisted living expense companies are calling and saying, "Hey, Sean, what's going on? We've submitted our invoices. We haven't got paid in months." The homeowners are saying, "Hey, I'm going to get put out of this trailer, out of this rental because I don't have the assisted living expense." Plus, they still got to pay their regular mortgage and insurance on top of it, and now try to find a rental or additional
yeah,
food or gas or something. So
yeah.
it's not just the buildings; they're playing games with assisted living expense as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're playing games with people's lives. It's not just a matter of just playing games with numbers or something like that. I've personally talked to some lady in Florida that we were trying to help, and she just broke down and started crying and telling me basically everything you've been telling me about these type of claims. It'd been several months at that point. She's got tarps over her roof, water's leaking in. She was trying to get a place to live. We would try to help her, but the insurance company wouldn't even. You couldn't even get anywhere. You can't. We can't confirm that they do have coverage and that they approved it, you can't do anything because you can't even get a hold of them to even begin to do all your job because we have to do our due diligence first. We're not going to jump in there and find out that later that somehow they denied it. We have to get all our stuff approved and checked out first. And there's a lot of good insurance companies that they take care of things really promptly. Unfortunately, in
Quite a
Florida,
few.
it seems, especially right now, you're just like, what is going on in this state? Things are just crazy. And I see probably a lot of other contractors that would try to stay away from things because it's such a dumpster fire. Things are just so chaotic and crazy that could sink up a small business. If you got in there and got a bunch of claims going and you couldn't get paid in a certain amount of time, you could just literally destroy your company trying to weigh
I'll
down
tell
to get
you,
it.
one of the most heartbreaking moments I had at Hurricane Ian, my partner and I walked into this older folks' home. He was a retired school teacher. His wife was in a scooter. She couldn't walk. Very elderly couple. And he was showing us around, and we went in the back room, and he started crying. And it was just me and my partner and this older gentleman. And he looked at me and he says, "I can't break down in front of my wife and kids. I have to be strong." He says, "But this is killing me." And I looked at him. I said, "It's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. We're going to get you through this." And he says, "I've been through a lot of things." And this man was pretty elderly. He says, "I was in the Korean War." He said, "I've been through some tough things." He goes, "But the toughest thing is every night having to put my wife to bed on a couch because we don't have a bed, and I don't have a place to sleep, and I can't cook for her. I can't take care of her. We can't even get around." And that was one of our first clients we signed up at Hurricane Ian. And as of today, 3/10/23, insurance company still hasn't finished paying them, and they're living in a
Wow.
trailer in front of their home. So to watch my father's a Vietnam vet,
Yeah.
and to watch a Korean War vet, a guy that basically part of the greatest generation, a little younger, that
Yeah.
has
Right.
lived his whole life and support his family, school teacher, obviously a pillar of the community, break down because he doesn't want to break down in front of his grandkids or his wife. That's that. As a former soldier, you take that to heart.
Of course. No, it's
That's my people
understandable.
right there.
Yeah. You think as well about if you can see all this stuff on a balance sheet or something like that, and you're just looking at, hey, how much money can we save, then it, I wouldn't say it looks good, but it's makes sense to them why they do things like that. But when you put a human face to it, like what you just did, and the way you describe it there, you're not just a matter of just taking advantage of some policyholder. This is somebody's life. This really affects them deeply. I can only imagine going through something like that. And like you're saying as well, we should care about taking care of people regardless of anything else. But especially in situations like this is when people need you the most.
Yeah,
I do
we
have
get
a
a lot of
question.
the. Go ahead.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to pivot here, but I have a question about what can somebody do? You've got your insured that you're trying to take care of. What can they try to do to protect their assets and mitigate risk as best they can? Do you have any kind of advice to some typical homeowner out there that, they see this going on and they're trying to protect themselves as best off as they could? What could they do?
First thing I would say is everybody's got a little thing in their pocket called a cell phone. So
Okay.
I would be taking as many pictures as I can. That'll definitely help you out. I'd also be very cautious on who you sign an agreement with. Florida, for instance, if you are any type of a contractor, you need to have a license with the state, sometimes the county. I would be very cautious on who you sign contracts with. Now they did away with assignment of benefits that went through on the last law,
The
but I would be
AOB thing.
careful.
Yeah.
I would be careful who you sign a contract with because you get a
Hmm.
lot of people that come rolling in from Missouri or Texas or Kansas, and they try to lap up a roof and get people to pay them money real quick. I would be very cautious of those people. Florida has many thousands of amazing, great contractors that are reputable, good people that will take care of you. I would also be cautious on don't lie to your insurance company, but don't speculate. Sometimes if you say something and guessing or you think it with emotion, it could hurt your case. That may not be the case. You need to sit back and think with a clear, concise, and come up with real answers, not emotional answers. If you start saying things to your insurance company that you feel are happened but maybe didn't happen, it could hurt your case to the point where you could be like, we're not paying that. I would say the final thing is every state that has a public adjuster and every state that has attorneys, which every state does,
Right.
if you're going to work with somebody, look up their license and see that they're real. You can, if it's an attorney, you can check with the state bar in that state just to make sure that they're a real person. It's a public adjuster. Every public adjuster in those states has an identification number. Verify and vet who you're working with. There's a lot of bad players out there that will say that they are public adjusters that aren't, and they'll play games and they'll be practicing without a license. So I would say that. And then the last thing I would say to prepare yourself is if there's a threat of a storm, get the heck out. Don't stay
Okay.
there. Out. Yeah, can't tell you how many homeowners I hear, oh, I was in the house. I was so scared. I've never been through anything. I realize you're attached to your house. It's your biggest investment. But if you're dead, there's nothing you can do to do it.
Right.
Get
You have
out.
a
When
good
they tell
point.
you to get out, things
Yeah.
can be replaced. People cannot be replaced.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's really important. I really value that. You're absolutely right with all that kind of stuff, especially like what you're talking about with the contractors, because there's a lot of good contractors, but there's also people out there that are simply looking at taking advantage of the situation and trying to capitalize on it as much as they can. So
Especially
that's
in
really
Florida, because we
unfortunate.
have a lot of elderly. We have a lot of elderly here, and people will take
Yeah,
advantage of elderly people.
yeah. Huh. That's crazy. Okay, so where do you see yourself going from here, John?
Aaraya has, like I said, I have a partner, Steven Strakowski is my business partner, and he was actually my mentor when I first got in. He taught me the game. He was a guy I worked for, and we partnered up right before Hurricane Ian to form our own company. And between the two of us, we're licensed in 19 states. We're still going to help the people in Florida. We're not going to run away from the people in Florida, but we see ourselves moving more to an industrial and commercial aspect of insurance claims. That's my first love anyway. That's my background. That's what I came from between OSHA and construction. Steve also has a very big corporate background. We're going to be stepping away from residential to some extent. We'll never leave it 100%, but we'll be focusing more on bigger claims with bigger clients and working more in the industrial commercial field of dealing with things. And we're doing that because I like the challenge, and so does Steve. They're more complex. And while you're out of your house, I get that's one family, but when a company's shut down, that's a lot of families that need help.
Yeah,
There's people that don't have a
very
job.
true.
So that's where we're going to be at. We're going to be, we just got approved for our license for a firm license in Colorado. So we'll be opening
Oh,
a
okay.
Colorado branch. Also in Texas, we're waiting for a few things. Steve's been approved for Texas, but we're waiting for a few things. So we'll be doing Texas, Oklahoma, and probably something out in California. But the 19 states we'll be practicing, we're going to be dealing with more industrial commercial clients and really focusing in on that more forte. We're starting a podcast. We got some video stuff going on. So we'll be putting out some informational, maybe putting together some books. I personally have a book coming out this spring. If anybody out there wants to buy it, just hit me
Yeah.
up. Thank you. It's my first book. So there's a lot of good things coming and a
Yeah.
lot of things we're focusing in on.
That's really cool. Hopefully, I can have you on again in the future and we can talk more about what's going on at that time and other states and how some kind of an event is going on in Texas. Hopefully not, but then again, you know how weather events are happening. We might have another Texas freeze next year. Who knows? Might be talking about, hopefully not. If you guys are there to help out, that would be a good thing. Yeah, I'd like to have you on again in the future and you can tell me about where you guys are growing, where you guys are moving to.
I appreciate you having me, Caleb. And if anybody out there needs our help, the website is aarayaclaims.com. And if we can't help you, we can get you a hold of people like Caleb or anybody else that specializes in an avenue. We can definitely help you out and, get everybody back on their feet.
Excellent. It was really nice talking with you, Sean. I look forward to having you on again.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye. Hi, this is Caleb Owens with Premier Insurance Housing. Do you need help with ALE or temporary housing for your policyholders or clients? If so, we would love to help out. We offer a wide range of services, and we offer our services nationwide. We offer mobile homes and fifth wheels to single-family homes and apartments. To request our services, just click the link in the description or give us a call, 405-604-0786.